So we need to be curious and ask questions as to whatever the situation might be. Maybe it's their behavior, maybe it's something they did in particular. When we're curious and ask questions, we'll find out why the behavior or situation came to fruition. We'll find out why did it get to this point. But being curious, we're less judgmental. You have to continually build your trust with them, because if you don't have that trust to begin with, when you approach them, they're immediately going to go into negative thoughts or think that you're not out to get them, but you're not trying to help them. You're trying to harm them in some way. I use the DISC personality assessment with my teens, and I find out, how do people want to be approached? The majority of our people don't like confrontation. So what they'll do is they'll just quiet down. They might just listen and just agree with everything because they don't feel that what they're going to say is even being valued or heard.
How do you handle excuses if they come with excuses or justifications for their actions, and they, in a way, negate their responsibility for those things, for those behaviors?
And that's a tough one, isn't it? Because
Yes.
when people don't see their role in what is occurring or the negativity, how do we make it so?
Do you follow some steps to handle these conversations? And do you have an example, maybe, to
Yes.
exemplify these steps?
Yeah. Part of it, I feel awareness.
Hi everyone. Today's episode guest is Virginia Sharp March. Virginia is a leadership coach and consultant with extensive experience in leadership positions. She helps individuals enhance their leadership skills and capabilities. She is a Maxwell Leadership Certified Coach, trainer, and speaker. She also conducts workshops and seminars to share her leadership knowledge with others and be their partner in their personal and professional growth. We talk about the skills that a leader should have and strengthen to be able to conduct difficult conversations with their team members. Virginia explains some of these skills and provides us with examples, guidance, and the steps she uses to handle difficult conversations. Let's listen to her insights. Welcome, Virginia, to the podcast. I'm glad that you are here. How are you?
I am good, thank you. Thank you for having me. I I enjoy leadership. I enjoy having people be led well. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit more about it.
Sure, I'm excited about our discussion, and I'm excited to know more about your leadership knowledge, because today we'll talk about leadership, how to handle difficult conversations, or if you want, courageous conversations. Some of the conversations leaders need to handle with their employees or team members are difficult conversations, such as mediating a conflict between two members of a team, or maybe stepping in to correct an unwanted behavior, or maybe they are in the situation to give a negative feedback. And to lead these conversations, they need to have specific skills. What are some skills that they should have in order to lead these conversations effectively and to avoid unwanted reactions or results that can happen, of course, if these are not led properly?
One thing, and I like how you said it, I like to say it, courageous conversations, because when we frame it as difficult conversations, people immediately start to get on edge. They get nervous, they get fearful, but it's courageous. It's an opportunity for a better understanding. And the skills that's needed, one is to being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Right.
Even though we're uncomfortable or perhaps a little bit nervous, doesn't mean we don't have the skill set to do it. It just means that perhaps getting it started, taking that first step, just takes a little bit more courage, a little bit more planning. And so that's where I think one thing is just being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And we need to be very caring about our people, being direct. And this is what a lot of times we tend to do as leaders. Perhaps we want to be well liked by our people. We want to always be encouraging them. We don't like to say no. I think in many ways in our lives, it's just not as a leader within a work situation, but even in our own lives, people will ask us, "Oh, you want to do this? Can you do this?" And we might hesitate because, well, maybe we don't want to, but we don't want to disappoint them. As a leader, we need to be okay with not being liked, at least at that moment, but know that we are caring for them because it's unkind when we're not direct with them.
Yes, it's a little bit like a child-parent situation when the parent has to say that something is not okay in the child behavior. But of course, this is different because there are adults involved. So they can manage better these kinds of conversations.
Right. Yeah. When they know that we're coming from the point of we want them to be doing their best, we want to challenge them to do their best. We have a vision for our team. We have a vision for the workplace. And so we're challenging them to help us fulfill that vision. And we need to be clear and direct with how we're communicating that to them. And so we need to be curious and ask questions as to whatever the situation might be. Maybe it's their behavior, maybe it's something they did in particular. When we're curious and ask questions, we'll find out why the behavior or situation came to fruition. We'll find out why did it get to this point. But being curious, we're less judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's very easy to become judgmental.
Right. How can we create trustful communication that our team members know that our intentions are well and we want the best for them? Because this is the base for confidence and for them to listen, to be open to listen what we have to say to them.
Right. And you mentioned trust, and that's it. You have to continually build your trust with them because if you don't have that trust to begin with, when you approach them, they're immediately going to go into negative thoughts or think that you're, you're not out to get them, but you're not trying to help them. You're trying to harm them in some way. So creating that trust throughout your entire relationship with them is so important. And we do that by meeting them where they're at,
Mm-hmm.
finding out about them, finding somehow to connect with them beyond what their tasks are in the work area. I always would walk around and meet my staff where they're at, where they are working, and try to find out where was that connection that we could talk about. Was it talking about their family, their pet, a book that they're reading? And when you have that connection, then you start to build trust.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when we get to that conversation, you can let them know that this conversation is not about maybe it's not about your customer service. It's not about what you're doing in one particular situation. It's about this other situation that might be negatively affecting those around them or that one instance that
Mm-hmm.
they did not perform as expected.
And in a situation, for example, in which an employee is new and he is with the company for a short period of time, and the leader didn't have the chance to create that trustful relationship with this employee, are different tactics or strategies to talk with this new employee?
Yeah, I feel that when they are new, come to the point that they were hired because of something we saw in them, something that was
Mm-hmm.
special, something that we knew would fit into the company environment. So start off the conversation saying, "We're glad you're here. You know, this is why we brought you in here. We're seeing this situation occur." And then ask questions to find out, were they trained properly? Maybe we didn't give them the right amount of training. Is the confidence there? Maybe the skill set isn't there that we thought was there.
Yes.
How many times have we done interviews and it's like a different person came to work after, beyond the person that you interviewed.
Yes,
So find,
in interviews we saw the best of them because they know that they are evaluated, assessed, and the goal is high. But after they got the job, maybe they are more relaxed and they show more of them.
right. Yes. Yeah. So that's why being curious and asking lots of questions for a better understanding. And, and it comes with maturity too. I think about when I was first in a leadership position as a public library director. Every time someone came into my office or I spoke to them and they had a problem, I felt it was my job to solve it. And then as I became more mature, I learned that sometimes people just want to be heard. They just want to express something. They don't necessarily want it solved. And then when they felt that there's a solution needed, I always learned to then ask, well, what would you do if I wasn't here? What are
Mhm.
some suggestions that you have? And by allowing them to have input, then they're going to have buy-in. They
Yes,
are going to be more apt to agree with that.
is their
And then,
solution.
right, exactly. It's their solution. And then you can empower them to fulfill, to follow through. And
Mhm.
like I said, that comes with maturity. In our different, stages of being a leader, and the more we're in it, the more we're practicing, we find what works best for us and to help our team members.
Mhm. One thing that is difficult in difficult conversation is the fact that people can become defensive. They can have some defense mechanism or maybe even biases. So they don't necessarily see the situation in an objective way. As a third party who is not involved may see the situation more clearly. How can a leader recognize these behaviors, these defense mechanisms and biases, and how they can approach these kinds of behaviors?
This is when being a leader and knowing yourself well and knowing others well, we use emotional intelligence and being aware of how people function. I use the DISC personality assessment with my teams, and I
Mhm.
find out, how do people want to be approached? And some of them are just like you talked about, they become very defensive. They don't like to be told that they're wrong. They feel that they're being taken advantage of. They might deflect,
Mhm.
onto other people, other situations. They might even deflect back to you as a leader. So that's why it's very important to stay focused in on the conversation, to make sure that we don't get distracted by other issues or concerns. But when we know our people, we know how to best approach them. So as you mentioned, someone who might become defensive, you go in knowing that, how do I phrase this conversation? How can I let them know that they are cared for. We trust them. They're a valued person here. But here's a situation. Let's take the emotions out of it and let's deal with this situation.
With the
And that's,
facts.
yes, right.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then we might have someone who is, majority of our people don't like confrontation. So what they'll do is they'll just quiet down. They might just listen and just agree with everything because they don't feel that what they're going to say is even being valued or heard. And with that, once again, asking questions, asking them to rephrase what you just said, asking them, what are they thinking? Trying to make sure to draw them out. And as leaders, we have to watch for that. Like I said, like you mentioned, that first person who becomes very defensive and they become, we can return that as violence. Well,
Verbal violence, yes, it can
verbal
be.
violence, right? And then we have that other group that goes silent. Yes. But so what you might have to do then is once the situation is out there and discussed, do we need to take a pause and say, hey, why don't we each take time to reflect upon this, come back and meet another day?
Mm-hmm. Do you help them to make the distinction between facts and their own opinions and their own interpretations?
Yes, that's a very good point because we all see everything from our own perspectives.
Yes.
But trying to help them see it from somebody else's perspective
Mm-hmm.
is another tool that a leader can do. Letting them know how this behavior or whatever this occurrence was has affected the team. I think of a team member, one of my clients, team member was supposed to be putting in reports on a regular basis and getting them done on a certain time in order for the next person to put a monthly report together. So this person's putting in the reports weekly, the next person puts it into a monthly report. Well, this person putting in the weekly reports isn't doing it,
Mm-hmm.
isn't doing it in a timely fashion. So then you've got that other person who, when month end comes, they can't run their reports. But you had to take that one person and say, hey, because you're not doing your job on a weekly basis,
Mm-hmm.
someone else can't do their job. So to try to give them that perspective on how their actions are affecting others.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's an internal situation, but perhaps their actions could be holding back from working with clients, which is then hurting the business and not bringing money into the business.
So helping them to see how their actions affects others determines them to be more aware of their behavior and to correct the behavior.
Right. Yes. And by conversation end, that's what you want to have is you want to have a plan so that we're not back having this conversation
Mm-hmm.
in another week or two or a month.
Yes.
Have have them be part of that solution. Find out, tell them this is the vision. This is what we need to do. What can you do so that we're getting it done in the way it needs to be done? And that creates the buy-in. And once you have that set, then we have to consider follow-up. How do we communicate the decision that we've already just made so that we both agree upon it? And how do we communicate and follow up to make sure that both parties are doing what they said they were going to be doing?
And how do you do this? Or how do you help them to achieve this?
Right. Depending on the situation, it could be a matter of, okay, let's do a follow-up email, say, thanks for meeting with me. Here's what we discussed and here's what we decided. Let's put this on the calendar for 2 weeks from now, whenever it is, so that we can meet again and see where it's going. Let's not get to the situation that we're in now. Let's not let it
Mm-hmm.
get out of control. Let's put a date on so that we know we can just follow up and see how's it going. Did that solution work? Do we need to tweak it? Do we need to make adjustments?
Mm-hmm. How do you handle excuses if they come with excuses or justifications for their actions, and they in a way negate their responsibility for those things, for those behaviors? What are some approaches for these kinds of reactions?
And that's a tough one, isn't it? Because
Yes.
when people don't see their role in what is occurring or the negativity, how do we make it so? Um, One is always find out, so what resources can I give you to help you understand this? What don't you understand? Let's come to a better understanding, asking those questions. And then beyond that, once again, letting them know how this is affecting the other perspective, finding a solution that works with them. But then there's some times that even though you've gone above and beyond, maybe you've given them training opportunities, maybe you've reassigned them or adjusted their responsibilities, and it's just not coming together. At that point, you're like, okay, how many times can I give this person the opportunities and they don't act upon it? And unfortunately, at some point, then it's the best for both to part ways. You can't force someone to do something.
Mhm. We come to this point in which we have to balance communicating being assertive, and showing empathy for that person or those people. So, how can we balance this?
It comes to mind when at one of my locations when I was working, we had a staff member. The staff member was fantastic with customer service. They had been trained by a national company and then they were providing excellent customer service. And this was within a library. The staff member, though, had a habit of not getting to work on time, was adjusting their lunch and their breaks without communicating that with their supervisor. They were leaving work early without approval. And we spoke with this individual, let them know this was the expectations. And we also tried to find out, so why aren't you coming to work on time? You know, why are you leaving early? We were trying to find solutions. One thing was said, well, they weren't a morning person. But
This
then
is
the
not
other,
an excuse.
right, no, it's not an excuse. And then the other acknowledgement was the person also said, but they didn't want to work the closing shift either. So we tried to find out sometimes there's an underlying cause. Here, I felt that this employee just wasn't passionate. She wasn't caring about the job that she was doing. So we tried to give this person opportunities to utilize their strengths, who serve the customers in other ways using her strengths. And that worked for a bit, but then the employee went back to their habits of the time and just in their own time. We worked with the person again. We really wanted to save this person because of the customer service skills and other knowledge that they had. But unfortunately, no matter what we did, they still went back to those bad habits.
Mhm.
In that particular situation, we did have to let the person go, which was quite unfortunate. But once again, it may not have been the underlying situations, problem. She obviously was not passionate about what she was doing
Mm-hmm.
at that library. And that's it. When someone keeps coming back with the same issues, try to find where their strengths are. Try to find out where the best fit is, where you can utilize those strengths so that they want to do a good job. They want to be a good team member. And sometimes they will either demote themselves and, leave the situation, or sometimes, unfortunately, you have to let them go because it did not work out. But it's
Mm-hmm.
hard. How many times do you give someone a chance?
I think 3 times.
Yeah. And also considering how is their behavior affecting the rest of the team?
Mm-hmm.
The rest of
Yes.
the team was becoming very frustrated. They knew we were working with as staff members, as much as you can within privacy, but it was still affecting them. They were going to have to leave, their time was to a certain point. So they were expecting this person to show up on time and take their place. She wasn't showing up. So when it's really affecting the team, you've got to, unfortunately, make that move, which might be uncomfortable, but
Mm-hmm.
in the long
Mm-hmm.
run might be the best for not just your team, but for that person too. Because we
Mm-hmm.
might be holding them, forcing them into a job or situation that isn't the perfect fit for them.
Mm-hmm. From your experience, what did you find that is the most difficult thing for a leader in these kinds of conversations that are difficult? What are the most frequent issues they encounter?
When you're saying frequent issues, are you saying particular situations? Or are you talking about emotions or
Yes, this can
reactions?
be included, yes, because emotions are part of these conversations. They can be
Right. Yeah.
expansive, they can be disturbing, and they can block the conversation. Um, they can create unpleasant situation or uncomfortable
Mhm.
conversations. How can the emotions be managed or controlled or handle it in a way that doesn't escalate the situation or the issue.
We can't control their people, we can control ourselves. That's the biggest thing is when we go into these conversations is being aware of how we react, how we respond and talk and ask questions will have an impact on the whole situation. If someone is becoming very defensive and deflecting,
Mm-hmm.
if we start to mirror that, then
Mm-hmm.
that situation is out of control. So we need to recognize when are we getting anxious or excited or maybe a little bit defensive of our own? And do we need to take a pause? Is it a matter of just breathing, whatever it takes to start to control your own emotions, whatever stress is in your body, and usually sitting back and listening, asking the questions will help, at least in my situation, it helps calm me that I can try to find peace. But if you as a leader start to mirror that defensive, then that's a time for a pause. That's a time to say, you know what, this conversation isn't going the way I would like it to. Let's meet back. It always follow through. We talk about holding our team members accountable, but
Yes,
it's very difficult to hold our team members accountable when we're not holding ourselves accountable.
right. We have
And when we
to give
say
an
that,
example, and they have to have who to mirror.
right, exactly. That
Mm-hmm.
means that we need to demonstrate what we expect of them. And if the conversation is not going the way we want it to, take that pause, Agree to a time when you're going to follow up and meet again and do
Mm-hmm.
it.
All right.
That's the biggest thing, is to follow up with that, because then that demonstrates to them the importance of this conversation, how you believe that it's important.
Mhm. Do you have a framework for those who need to handle difficult conversations or conflicts? Do you use such a framework, or do you follow some steps uh, to handle these conversations? And do you have an example, maybe,
Yeah.
to
Yes.
exemplify these steps?
Yeah. Um, Part of it, I feel awareness. We spoke a little bit about it earlier, and that's being aware of how we conduct ourselves and how the other person is. It's that emotional intelligence, knowing their personality type. Are they someone who is very chatty and is easily distracted, so the conversation can go in all sorts of ways? Are they someone who does not like confrontation, so they're going to be quiet, disagree, and you might determine that, okay, we've came to an agreement, but in their mind it's still the same thing. And then you've got that person, as we mentioned, becomes very defensive. So being aware of how each person functions and how we function. Then there's the background of the situation. That's the B, finding out what has caused us to get to this situation, what is not being done, what needs to be done. You might have to inquire about from other team members and ask them questions. So we have to be careful not to let gossip or other issues distract us. Stay focused on the topic at hand. And then there's C, there's having that conversation. And when you have that conversation, you're going to observe and let them know that, you know, this is a little bit awkward for me. This is a little bit difficult for me. Acknowledge that. And that's great. That way, it might be a little bit awkward or uncomfortable for them. And it puts you both on the same playing field. And then acknowledge what it is and what it isn't. As I mentioned earlier, the young girl, it was not her customer service. Her customer service was outstanding, but it was her work ethic, her tardiness. And then express your needs. This is the vision. This is the needs that we have. We need you to get to work on time. We need you to call us if you are going to be late, or speak to a supervisor if you want to adjust your lunchtime. And then the request and coming up with the follow through. Make sure it's an agreement with them. Does this work for you? What else can we do? What other resources do you need to be successful? So there's that awareness, the background of the information, having the conversation, and determining the needs and the outcome and the follow up. I Another example is a library staff member. Once again, it had to do with time off. That tends to be a
An
big
issue.
thing, an issue. This particular one had health issues along with their partner. But rather than just take an hour or two off for an appointment, this team member would take a whole day off. And
Mm.
sometimes it was the evening shift that this team member was supposed to be taking on. So that was putting a burden on the rest of the team, because they were having to fill in for this person's night shifts. They were having to adjust their schedules because this person was not there. Met with the person, once again, outstanding when it comes to customer service, knew what needed to be done, but then demonstrated how their behavior with taking their time off was affecting the rest of the team. We came to some resolution when we decided, this person gets a day off during the week. Can those
Mm-hmm.
appointments be on that day off? If it's only a short appointment, can they come in after the appointment? And we were able to come to a resolution that worked for them. And they were able to follow through with this. And they're still in that position many years later.
Great.
But it,
So there
yeah,
are successful situations and situations that are not so, that don't
right.
end so good. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. And it's letting them know that as a young leader, once again, I said, a lot of times I look too much at that person and wanting to make them happy and
Mm-hmm.
not wanting to make them uncomfortable. But as a mature leader, I realize how everyone's behavior affects the team.
It's a
So
system.
it's a system, exactly. And
Yes.
when you look at how is this affecting the system, the team, then there's the importance of having that difficult conversation and being courageous about it. When you have the tools, the
Yes.
awareness, background, um, when you have all those in place, then you're going to feel more empowered to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And there,
And
people are going to respect more.
yes, and knowing that it's in their beneficial also, it also helps because you come with a good intention, and it's good for all the parts involved to reach a resolution or a solution to that issue.
Right. Yeah. And it's like I said, it's empowering, not just for you, but for them too,
Yes,
to know that their voice has been heard. We value them. We're going to give them the tools that they need to be successful. And then they can work with us to make sure that their impact on the team is a positive one and not a negative one.
hmm. Virginia, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us. It's very important to know how to handle these kinds of conversation because uh, the results can be very good for the business or very there could be poor results for the team members or also for the business. And it's always useful to have the necessary skills to handle these conversations, not only in the workplace but also in our personal lives, because we can apply these skills outside the work also.
Absolutely.
I will share your social media links in the notes and your website also. Is there any particular way in which you prefer people to reach out to you?
They can message me on LinkedIn. I'm active on there. If they want to set up a time within my website, there's a spot to set up a Calendly link and schedule a time just to chat. But if they connect with me on LinkedIn, they can say, "Hey, I saw your talk with Daniela, and that really intrigued me. Let's connect and have a virtual coffee." I'd love to talk to people about leadership because I believe we all deserve to be led well, and we can empower one another through our own actions and through our behaviors. And then that has that ripple effect because when we're leading ourselves well and we lead others well, they will then lead others in their lives well too.
For sure. Thank you very much, Virginia.
Okay. Thank you, Daniela.